All right, let's make the transition. Let's talk a little college football with the handsome John Canzano. We go from NFL to college football, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, best selection of pizzas and local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Follow John on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. Read his work at JohnCanzano.com. God, he's got a radio show, too. The Bald-Faced Truth in Portland, 750 The Game. The man is everywhere. He's taken over media, not only in Portland, the Northwest, but in the country. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I was listening a little bit to your last guest talk about who's on the barge. I'm just glad I'm not on the barge. I think that's a good thing. And how about Ricky Pearsall for comeback player of the year? Like you get shot, bullet passes through you, then you're catching passes on the field. Like feels like it was like 2 weeks later he's out on the field. Like what a great story.
Yeah, I like that. We're gonna start that every week. Another player or NFL team to put on the barge where we ship them off to the Pacific Ocean. And the best part is when we're wrong, we just bring them back.
Yeah, you just bring them back. Yeah. Total no accountability at all. So just bring them right back off.
Yeah, there's no accountability. It's sports. We're wrong all the time. I always love people in our industry that get so bent out of shape because they have so much desire to be right about something. It's an opinion-based business. There's no right or wrong answers.
Yeah. I was telling a story the other day. I had a Duck fan one time who was really mad about something I wrote. I don't even remember what it was. This was years ago. But I was out to dinner with my wife, and we're in a restaurant. And, we don't go out a lot. And we've got 3 daughters, right? And so we're out for a rare night out, and we're sitting in a restaurant. And this guy walks up to the table, doesn't say anything, and drops a folded up note in the middle of my plate. Okay. Right in the middle of my food, drops this note there. I open it up and I'm confused. And I look at it and it says, "I hope you choke on your food. You're horrible to the Ducks," whatever. I look up, the guy's scurrying away, right? He's looking for an exit, but he doesn't. He goes into the bathroom, Puck. So I get up and I follow this guy to the bathroom. And it's one of these restaurants that has like just a single stall so you can lock the bathroom or whatever. My wife is going, "Check, please." Like she's already at the front of the restaurant because she knows I'm going to punch this guy out. And so I'm standing outside the bathroom for a while. And I finally just yell to the guy. I go, "I'm not leaving. I'm going to be out here waiting for you. I would be there at 2:00 in the morning. If I'm waiting for you." So I've got the note in my hand. It's like balled up. Like I'm ready to just like grab. I'm trying to think, like, am I going to grab him by the throat and punch him? Am I going to, tackle him? What am I going to do here to this guy who's been rude to me? And so ultimately he opens the door. He's super embarrassed. He's red. He's not making eye contact. He's trying to scurry past me. And I take the note in my hand, and instead of punching him, I just throw the note right off his forehead. It just hits him right on the side of the forehead and bounces away. And then I follow him. He goes to his table, Puck, in the restaurant. He's sitting with his wife and his in-laws who are horrified. Like they have watched him do this. They're embarrassed. He sits down. He's looking down. He can't even look up at me. I'm thinking, do I flip the table over? What do I do? Like I'm trying to am I going to rise to his level of irrational behavior, or am I going to be the bigger person? Somehow, some way, probably because my wife is watching across the restaurant, I just put my hands on the table and I said, "Hey, you guys have a nice night." And I left. Years later, I'm at Levi Stadium for a Pac-12 championship game. Guy comes up to me in the parking lot and says, "Hey, years ago, restaurant, threw something in your plate. I'm really sorry. I'm embarrassed." He apologized, talked about how much he had grown up. And I thought to myself, I'm so glad I didn't choke this guy out, because I gave him an opportunity. We put him on the barge. We let him come back off the barge, so to speak.
Yeah.
It just shows you like the depths of, that thin stripe of fans. And it's not just Duck fans. No. There's just a thin stripe of every fan base who has no rational, like they've lost their tether to reality and everything feels bigger than life. And, I just know in that moment where he threw it on my plate, he hadn't thought beyond dropping the note in the plate. He had no plan. He had no exit plan. This was not Ocean's 11.
Every fan base. God, that's a great story. It's just phenomenal. I cannot believe that you didn't kill the guy. I honestly can't believe you didn't do it. Flip, I thought you were going to go up to the table and like buy him a drink or something, but
no.
good for you. That
I wanted to flip it over though. You know what I mean? I was just going to flip the table over and just let it go everywhere.
But every fan base, it's I just love when other fan bases go, that's the worst fan base ever.
Right.
I mean, every fan base has got that lunatic fringe to it.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Maybe some more than others, but every fan base has it.
The thing that, like, I understand it because, I've been a fan. You've been a fan, right? You understand what it's like to live it and breathe it and be upset when your team's not performing or somebody's criticizing your team. But where it crosses the line for me always, the common theme to me is when you start to, like, I can take it, I dish it, I have opinions, I say, oh, this team's going to win, this team's going to lose, as we were talking about predictions and being right all the time. You don't have to be right all the time. It's just my opinion. But where it crosses the line for me is when they go beyond me and they go after, like, my kids, my family. I had one guy on the radio show that was making a bunch of death threats and just horrible stuff. And I just started playing his death threats on the radio. The police told me to play them. And the guy stopped calling, probably heard his voice and went, oh my gosh, what do I sound like? I sound like that when I'm calling in and leaving you a voicemail. So this guy was calling, asking where my kids go to school, stuff like that. I mean, it just crosses the line. Like, come on.
Yeah, I fortunately I had one of those incidents. Yeah, this guy, it was bad. We have I don't know if this was back in radio, but I don't know if you guys have it in the radio station. Do you have like a separate text line?
No, we used to, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Where, that text, it's just their number that pops up. So it's not like Twitter, there's no like handle. It's just someone's number. And there was a guy that was real, like on me a lot. I mean, to the point where it was really crossing the line. Like I know where you live. I'm going to find you. I know where your kids go to school, like stuff like that, where, I went to management. I said, listen, like this has now gone beyond just shit talking and all that. Like, he has like specific information now. I don't know how he has that. So, you got to do something about it. So there's always someone that's going to cross the line.
It's weird. And you know what? The police told me, like, look, just play the voicemails. I had like 3 or 4 voicemails. They were horrible. Like when you play them, it's just a guy talking, like saying horrible things about, where do your kids go to school? What do they look like? What color's their hair? Just a lot of threats. But I played them and it stopped. So I'm assuming the dude was like probably a diehard listener of the show who was listening to everything that I said about his team, who heard his voice and went, oh my gosh, someone's going to recognize my voice and I'm going to get outed. So I had another incident. I was in Fresno covering Fresno State. Jerry Tarkanian was the coach, and there was this element around the program that was a little Las Vegas-like. And so you had sort of some dangerous characters that were on the fringe of the program. Yeah, I wouldn't screw up. California, and a lot of cologne and chains and some chest hair coming out. You know what I mean?
Tracksuit.
But I wrote a column, and I had somebody smash the windows of my car in front of my house. And then leave a message saying, hey, that'll teach you to talk about the team that way. And I called the police and I said, what do I do? And they go, well, normally when people make a threat, they never follow it up by coming to your house. Like they said they never investigated a murder where someone called first and said, I'm coming over to kill you. So usually when they're making a threat, that it's not a real threat. But the fact that somebody knew where I lived and smashed the windows on my car was a little jarring.
Yeah. I just have seen people in the chat. Oh, every fan base has got it, but so-and-so is the worst. Like I have seen the 49ers always get this bad rap, but they're the worst fans in the world. I've been to plenty of Seahawks games, man. I see how Seahawks fans act. Listen, I mean, there's, and again, it's a small minority, but they're idiots. They're just idiots everywhere. Cougar fans, I've been to Cougar games where Cougar fans are just idiots. Like Washington likes to promote themselves as like, oh, holier than thou. I've been to Apple Cups where my friends have been kicked in the back for fans. I mean, just every fan base has got that 1% of them, and we focus in on them, more so than the rest. The majority of fans are great.
The Chip Kelly era, Oregon football, there were some threats that were made, and the newspaper I was working for called the University of Oregon and asked, could I get a security guard that would escort me from my parking spot through the parking lot before the games, because there were some people who were making threats. And Oregon said no, but they would grant an extra credential. And I had a security person come with me to the games just to serve as a witness, more or less, if something happened in the parking lot. But it's not just Oregon. I was at an Oregon State game on the sideline. Somebody threw a bottle at me from out of the crowd. This bottle goes flying over my head. It's just we can say fanatic and we go, oh, they're fanatics. They're wild. They're crazy. They're unhinged.
Right.
But give me a break. Like, you really want to get in an altercation with me? And from my standpoint, there's no winning that. If I choke the guy out at the restaurant, I'm the bad guy.
Of course, you're the bad guy because you're the public figure. Okay. Yep. So with all that being said, who's the worst fan base in America?
Well, here's how I would say. Here's what I would
answer that. I'm just being a smart.
Here's what I would say, though. There's two kinds of bad. There's bad when you're winning and you're undefeated and you're great and you can't handle the winning. And then there's bad when when something's not going well and you're just kicking the dog and taking it out on everybody else. Which one of those is worse? Is it worse that you're so obnoxious you can't handle the success? Or is it worse that, you're emotionally immature and you can't handle setbacks and losses?
Probably the first one that you described. I mean, Are you describing one like when you were describing that? I just thought about Alabama.
Yeah.
That's because of obviously what they're going through right now and what they're experiencing.
Yeah, right.
They're just like, this is not, there's probably a large percentage of the people in Alabama right now that want him fired, that want Kalen DeBoer out of a job.
Yeah. And they're not recognizing that Nick Saban was signaling that something had changed by virtue of the fact that he said, I want out. And I remember having a conversation with an ACC coach the day Saban announced his retirement. And I said, what do you think of it? And the coach said, well, he knows he doesn't have unquestionably the better team anymore. And that NIL has changed the equation. And there are going to be a lot of the blue blood programs that have to come to that realization. I think you're seeing some of it right now. And we're watching Alabama lose. We've seen some other programs rise up. I mean, Oregon is so uniquely positioned in this era of portal and NIL to matter that it's like they're on turbo juice or something. Like, it's just ridiculous how well positioned Oregon is. And then USC struggling because, they got Lincoln Riley and they haven't quite figured out how to harness Southern California and the NIL collective. So I just think there's some blue bloods out there that, and we're watching Navy and Army because why? Well, their rosters are older. They don't lose players in the portal. They've got some retention. Now, are they one of the best 4 teams in America? No, but they could be a really good program. Jake Dickert's proven that at Washington State. It's retention. That can matter just as much as being, having a collective and a bunch of NIL money.
What do you make of so Oregon's number one right now? If you start looking at what they've got left in front of them, Illinois this week, which is going to be a good test, but they get them at home. They'll go at Michigan. Michigan's clearly not the same team that they were a year ago. Back with a home game against Maryland, at Wisconsin, and then they'll wrap up with Washington.
I think
pretty favorable.
Oregon could lose a game in here, but they're going to be favored in every one of those. Yeah. And I think Dan Lanning did a really smart thing. You could see him at the end of the Purdue game on the sideline. The game hadn't even ended yet. And he's turning to Tosh Lupoi as defensive coordinator. And you can kind of see a serious look on his face. And then Lanning comes right out of that when he does the post-game interview. And he starts talking about how it wasn't good enough. We didn't tackle well enough. He just beat Purdue 35-0 on the road on a Friday night, a short week after Ohio State. It was a trap game waiting to happen. And Oregon just played really well for most of that game. But Dan Lanning's messaging was like, we can tackle better. We're not the team we want to be. Then he's closed practice this week for the first time. He's closing ranks, basically telling those guys, hey, it's short-lived. I talked to a former Oregon Duck, was on the 2012 team and the 2010 team, Nick Cody, an offensive lineman. And, he remembers being ranked number one. The last time they were ranked number one, they lost the next game. So I think there's just been a lot of messaging this week from Oregon's standpoint about, hey, it doesn't mean anything. It's not the goal to be ranked in week 9 of the season, ranked number 1. That's not a national championship. It's not a playoff berth. But I still think, Oregon could lose a game. It could even lose the conference championship plus a game. I think what we see now is we see Oregon as a playoff team. I think they're in this thing, and now it's about, can you get yourself that first round bye that everybody covets? There's no point in going to the conference title game unless you're going to win it, especially if they're going to run into Ohio State again or maybe Penn State or Indiana. But I think Oregon's feeling really good about where it is, and probably feeling good that it had some tests in the early part of the season against Boise State and Idaho State that I think helped them.
And what's cool is that we got the college football playoff rankings that come out at 4:00 tonight. I mean, this is now, as we go into this week 9 of college football, this is when the playoffs start, because this is now a playoffs that start right now. Everyone's saying, well, the playoffs going to start at the end of the year. No, it starts now because of the 12 teams are going to be in it. You got the first 4 teams that are vying for that bye right now. I mean, we would assume that the first 4 are going to be Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State, just kind of, in line with what the AP top 25 poll is. How do my Cougs sneak into the top 25 into the college football playoff rankings tonight? Is there a chance? Is there hope for us?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think you saw it in the AP top 25 poll. I mean, Washington State was sitting in that 26th position. I was kind of looking at where they were ranked. They were showing up like 23, 24 on some ballots. I think all Washington State needs to do is win out. And it's a beauty contest now for Washington State. I think it's why, even though the competition was inferior last week with Hawaii, I thought it was a really good win. It was a nice statement that, hey, Washington State's not just good. They're a dominant team in that kind of situation. So you have to do some of that work. I also think if you're Washington State, you got to watch Texas Tech and you got to watch Washington. You need Washington to start pulling its weight here and winning some games. This is a Washington team that is probably underachieved to this point, lost some games, didn't show up 2 weeks ago against Iowa. So you need Washington and Texas Tech. I think it would do a lot for Washington State if Texas Tech could continue to win games.
The complaining has started for some in the Washington camp of that the horror that they have to play 2 back-to-back 9 a.m. games.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what they signed up for.
Yeah, what did you think? Bob Thompson, the former Fox president, when the Friday night games came out, and here was Oregon playing 2, and Washington playing 2, and UCLA playing 2, and there was some belly aching about that. He said, "What did they think? That they were going to play at noon on Saturday every week? No, you're there to fill windows, and you are not Michigan, and you are not Ohio State." And those schools are not playing Friday night games. They are going to show up, and they're only going to play one night game on Saturday nights during the season. So, look, I think this is where you are, and you're on the Big Ten Network because you haven't performed. And the start of the season kind of, week 1 was just a great example. Here came, the TV, the TV schedule came out, and it was Oregon and Washington playing on the Big Ten Network. And guess what? They're blacked out. So you got to win football games if you want to have better kickoff times and more platform. And it's that simple. So 40-16 kind of decided that.
You give the Huskies a shot against Indiana. They don't have their starting quarterback. And God, they just get a gift. They haven't played a quarterback all year except for John Mateer. And the Curtis Work guy is out with a thumb injury. They'll get the backup quarterback. Do you know the interesting story about the backup quarterback at all?
No, fire it. Let me hear it.
The Tavion Jackson is the son of legendary cornerback Ray Jackson for the Washington State Cougars.
Love that.
How about that?
There you go.
Huh?
Small world.
So Tavion Jackson will get the start this week. But Indiana's been a great storyline. They're 6.5-point favorites. Who do you like in that one?
You have to say Indiana based on the performance of Washington at this point. It says more about Washington than Indiana. But look, this is an opportunity for Jed Fish. And I still think Washington's going to win a game at some point that nobody expects them to win. They're going to win as an underdog at some point of this last half of the season. But the schedule's so brutal. I almost look at the Indiana game without the quarterback as like, is this an opportunity for Washington to get one? Because, they're going to Penn State on a whiteout later in the year. They're not winning that game. You just start to look at their schedule and it starts to close in on Washington. But 2 weeks ago, I didn't like what I saw, and I didn't like it from a physicality standpoint. I didn't like it from a competition standpoint. that was not a team that was competing, and it was not a team that was physical. And that really surprised me because I thought, if anything, Washington could play in the 20s with a bunch of teams this season. And so show me that you found something out in the bye week. You did some soul searching, because this is not a blue blood Indiana program. This is not Penn State. I don't think Indiana is going to be there at the end in the Big Ten title game. So prove to me that you're not a doormat program in the Big Ten, because people are looking over right now at all those Pac-12 schools that came in, and they're going, well, it's Oregon and 3 schools that are at the bottom of the barrel in conference standings. So USC and Washington have to start doing some lifting.
Yeah, I do. I'm with you on this one. I think with the quarterback now being out, they have the backup. I know he's played. He's got some experience. I think this is a game that Washington can get. Like, if I am betting on this game, I would take Washington in the points. I know that the time difference thing is going to be a storyline, has been a storyline, but it's not like Indiana's had a murderous row of competition. I mean, I don't know how good Nebraska is. I mean, they throttled Nebraska, but other than that, I mean, it's Northwestern, Maryland, Charlotte, UCLA, Western Illinois, FIU, and I like the Indiana coach. I do, and we like personalities, but I think he's just a little too cocky, and I just think at some point it's going to kind of backfire on him a little bit. And this seems like you get all this national attention, which they're getting, and he's doing interviews and car wash interviews everywhere. College Game Day is going to be there. This could be the one where they slip up. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Washington.
I agree. And I think it's set up that way. Look, I covered that IU program in 1998 or so. Antoine Randall was the quarterback. Football at Indiana is not supposed to be driving the bus on that campus. But it's a great story. He's a great coach. You look at what he did at James Madison. He went 11-1 last year, and he brought a bunch of players over that had a whole bunch of experience. But you tell me, you just looked at their schedule. What's their best win?
Yeah.
Would beating Washington be their best win? I don't know. Like going to UCLA, is that their best win? What's the best win? Because Nebraska, to me, like Purdue's bad. Okay. Purdue, Nebraska was 0-0 at halftime, and Nebraska ended up winning that game and they played a great second half. But that was a 0-0 game at halftime. It surprised me a little bit. So I think Nebraska is kind of a really incomplete team. UCLA is broken. We know that. But, let's see what Jed Fish figured out during the bye week. Washington's not a bad upset special this week.
Yeah. What have we learned? Is there anything new that came out? I'm fascinated that you went down and covered the media days, the Mountain West, the WCC media days. You had a great sit down, long interview with Gonzaga coach Mark Few. I want to get into that. But was there anything, off the mic, in maybe the bars, in the hallways? I mean, where are we at right now with Pac-12 expansion? Who they need one more team. Who is eventually going to be that one more team? Have there been any rumors swirling around?
Well, there's a lot of speculation, and it was such a weird event, Puck. You had WCC, who just lost Gonzaga to the Pac-12. You got the Mountain West as part of this joint event. You lost 5 schools to the Pac-12. And then you have Washington State and Oregon State that were part of the event. It was 3 conferences in the room together in this event. The Pac-12 Enterprises was producing the WCC content. I'm there. I'm having all these conversations with coaches, some athletic directors. There's a lot of talk about Grand Canyon and St. Mary's because they were in the room. Would the Mountain West try to poach them? You got Stu Jackson, the WCC commissioner, Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West commissioner. It was just so weird. It was like this cocktail party that was thrown in Vegas for, all of these entities that have, they're holding knives behind their backs, ready to stab each other and take teams. And, I was going back through security after leaving Vegas, and Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West commissioner's there. She goes through security, and Shantae Legans, the University of Portland coach, and the WCC is there. He sees her. She gets pulled out of line for additional screening. And Shantae yells, check her pockets, make sure she doesn't have any more WCC schools in there. Or, she taking Grand Canyon. So it was just kind of this surreal scene in Vegas. But here's what it comes down to. The Pac-12 is out to market. They've hired a consulting firm. They are now busy kind of trying to figure out, should they divide basketball and split it off from football? Do they try to sell it together? I think a lot of the appetite for, Gonzaga, and Gonzaga being involved is going to drive that decision if they separate. But then the larger picture is, as they approach these potential media partners, I think the biggest vote in the room now belongs to the media partners, as it did with Big Ten and Big 12 and SEC expansion. You're going to ask those media partners, okay, what will you pay for Memphis? What will you pay for Tulane? What additional value can we put into the deal if it's UNLV and Memphis, if it's UNLV and Nevada, if it's somebody else? Do you then pivot and go, hey, model some Power 4 schools in there? Do you include Cal or Utah or Arizona State? And just to see, is there an appetite for those schools wanting to come back? I think if you're smart, you do all of the above, and then you let the market dictate whether or not those are real conversations you need to have. If you don't have enough value in the deal, you don't go after them. But if, let's just say somebody comes back and says, yeah, there's an additional $5 million per school if you can lure in these two partners. Suddenly you're having some conversations that nobody's talked about. And Mark Few said something to me at Media Day, and I'm always listening when I'm interviewing people. I'm listening to what they're saying. And Few made this comment to me. When Teresa Gold went to visit him in Spokane, she sits with him and sells him on the idea that Gonzaga joining now, meaning that day that Gonzaga came in or the day later, would potentially change the conversation for others and maybe bring some people they didn't expect into the conversation. I found that interesting that Few was talking. He was very candid in talking with me about that. And so I think Gonzaga viewed it as, hey, we're not just joining the Pac-12, we're changing the conversation by joining the Pac-12. And you notice that day where it happened, suddenly all of the media out there, some of the fans out there were going, oh, this is just the Mountain West. This is just should have merged. Suddenly saw Gonzaga in the room and went, okay, this is a little different. And, there's some validation there. And so I really do think that the media partners that are out there, and, we're being told like it's, of course they're going to talk to ESPN and Fox and CBS, but TNT has some money to spend. They didn't get the NBA deal. You have the potential to go back to Apple. You have the CW that has been invested in this trial run this year with expanding their coverage. So you got some new partners in the room. You're the only one that's out there. You can't tell me that the Mountain West is also out there. They're not the same. This is the Mountain West, not the same as what the Pac-12 is selling. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what those media partners say when they cast that vote and go, yes, we'd like UNLV. Yes, we'd like Memphis. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they want something bigger.
Can you ask the people that run CW what the hell happened last week's game against Washington State and Hawaii? It was the worst coverage I've ever seen. I was watching it on YouTube TV. Well, first at a bar and then at YouTube TV. It was like you got like vertigo watching it.
I have heard from a few people who use YouTube TV that the CW broadcast on YouTube TV has had some issues. Now, I know that I've talked with the Pac-12 week to week as they're, if an issue comes up, they've been really good about trying to troubleshoot some of that stuff. I have found, Puck, and I'll just put this out for your viewers. Like, I have found that the digital signal that is over the air, to me, feels like it's crisper and it's better than what I can see on YouTube TV. And it may just be some way that is being, rebroadcast within YouTube TV that could be the issue. But I was watching it over the air. I didn't see any of that, but I got emails from people saying, I'm having an issue. It's glitchy. It keeps cutting out. But I'm just wondering if the issue might be that there's some kind of glitch inside of how it's being transmitted on YouTube TV. I'll ask. I'll find out. There were
people who have Comcast, who have cable, had issues with it as well. So I don't know, but it was a hard watch. They finally figured out in the fourth quarter
that they don't see the picture in high definition. But keep an eye on your guide. Sometimes there's two channels that offer the CW. One will be an HD version. One will be not HD. So if you're having that issue where you're watching and you're going, gosh, it looks like it's 1990 here, then look to see if maybe your guide has a second option. But this is stuff that shouldn't be coming up.
Right.
If you're going to go with the CW and you're the Pac-12, you have to fix all this stuff this season. Like, you need to iron all this out so that people have confidence that they can get the games in a meaningful way going forward.
When you talked to Mark Few, this was before Tony Bennett had stepped down. Did you get into any of the conversations with Mark Few of like what happened with Tony Bennett?
Yeah, well, Bennett had just stepped down, and I talked to Few like an hour later.
Oh, that's right. He had stepped down. Okay.
So he had just stepped down. And Few, I mean, he opened up about it. And he talked about all the hats you have to wear, all the things you have to do now, how the conversation when you're recruiting a kid, even at Gonzaga, begins with, what can your NIL collective do for me? It's a different job. And Few sort of said, you either have to adapt and you either have to open your mind to it, or you have to do what Tony did. And he said, I got a lot of respect for what Tony did, because if you just acknowledge I'm not the right coach anymore because I can't do this stuff, you're just saying what Chris Peterson and David Shaw and, you know, a whole bunch of other coaches have said. And we also talked about the burn rate of coaches. And, you know, we were just spitballing. And I said, you know, we've seen coaches stay places for 15 or 20 years. And Few said he thinks that burn rate will now be more like it's a 5 to 10 year job, and guys will start talking about it. And you heard it from Jake Dickert. He said, what did he say? 10 years, right on your show.
10 years
like
out.
Because coaches can't fathom the idea of being in this position where it's 24/7, 365. You recruit a kid, you lose a kid, you have to get them back in the portal. They jump in the portal, they jump out of the portal. All of that, plus the money element, plus, the actual teaching and the X's and O's of coaching that you got into it for the first place. So what we're seeing are the guys who are getting in the business now understand it. And it's more of a recruiter's job. Dan Lanning, Kenny Dillingham in football, younger guys. But the coaches who have been in it a while are looking around going, I'm going to do this for 2 more years. I'm going to do this, because they can't wrap their heads around the idea that they could spend 20 years in this job. It's just not going to happen anymore. And Few said, you got to find people on your staff who want to do all the things you don't want to do. And if you can't, you got to do what Tony did.
Yeah. It's a hard job. I mean, I get it. And I also get people that come down on and be like, you guys have been making a lot of money for a lot of years, and like, stop complaining about it. But
sure.
Yeah, the job description has changed immensely for him. Go catch all of John's work at johncanzano.com. He's going to have his picks coming out later this week. The man should be moving to Vegas with all of his picks. I know he's got some locks, but he's going to reveal that. When do you reveal all your
Thursday morning on the picks? I got something coming this afternoon on the Pac-12 media rights front. I just, I've learned some things, some stuff I need to confirm, but it's a lot of what we've talked about here and kind of what happens next for the Pac-12. But Thursday morning is the picks. And I found, look, I don't want to say this. I should knock on wood. I probably shouldn't say this. The schedule of games this week, Puck, I don't know that I felt better about my picks than this week in any other week.
Man, you've been on fire. You really have. It's amazing. Not only just against, just the picks outright, but just the against the spread as well. All right.
I've trusted USC too much. It's been a real thorn for me, but
he's out at the end of the year. Don't you think? I think she's going to turf him,
but they would owe him $88 million. It's like, that's a lot of money, unless you have a donor who's willing to say, all right, I'm good for 80 million.
That is a lot.
You have a real problem there. But she would trade, here's the thing though. I kind of think it depends who's available.
Yeah.
She would trade Lincoln Riley for Kalen DeBoer now. Like, she would do that.
Maybe DeBoer would want that as well.
Mid-season. She would do it. And, because that's an adult,
Right.
And that's what USC needs. It needs an adult to be the head coach.
Yeah, for sure. All right, John. Again, all of John's work, johncanzano.com. Follow him on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. And, of course, listen to his fine radio show that starts shortly. It's coming up pretty soon at the Bald Face True 750, the game down in Portland. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Puck.
There he is, John Canzano. JohnCanzano.com. Again, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Best selection of pizzas, local Northwest craft beers. Visit Zeke's Pizza. Follow John on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. Read all of his work again, johncanzano.com, including that story and that sit down with Mark Few. His radio show is daily down in Portland, the Bald Face Truth 750 The Game.